Okay.
Bring mine from last
There
week.
you go down. All right, so remember text. Continue to remember the Cogdell family and David and little David and Mr. Leslie. You got anything new on them?
They seem to be doing better. They are.
Good.
It'll take a while, take a long time, but they all better than they were the first week.
There you go. Who else?
There's a little boy named Trent. Trent, y'all was just waiting, he's turning 18 in July, he's aging out of the system. He's been in the orphanage for 7 years. Good kid, good grades, graduates next year, but he's sort of at the end of the road, turning 18, where he's going to go. He's got a job interview tomorrow with TSA at the airport, and if he does well with the interview, they're going to put him on as an intern during the summer. And if he does well, they'll offer him full scholarship. He wants to go to IT, and that's what he loves for years. He's in the top 5 in his class. So he's achieved a lot on his own. Y'all pray for his interview tomorrow, if he does well, for the whole future, right?
Trent. What? Did you have his last name? Okay. All right. Okay.
He and all his siblings have grown up in the foster care system.
Hmm.
Since he was 5 years old.
He's just finished his junior year. He really would like to stay at King High School. He's been there for 4 or 5 years.
Like to finish out there.
And that's a terrible piece of news on the interview. Y'all please pray for him tomorrow as he starts this journey.
Okay. Anybody else?
My great grandmother is in Clovis. She got some thinking when she was little. She kind of returned. She's kind of refusing to eat and drink and stuff now. So we just keep her in our thoughts. And my grandma's having a really hard time with it. So
Gotcha. And what's her name?
her name is Caroline Jackson.
Caroline Jackson. Okay. And you said you're great.
It's my great grandmother.
You're great.
My last great grandparent that is living.
Gotcha. Caroline Jackson. Bruce, you got anybody?
Do I have anybody to pray for?
Yeah.
There is a urgent need for a pastor in our community that needs our prayer. Thanks a lot.
All right. So you say a church or a community in our area?
Yes, church.
Okay. All right.
I have a unspoken.
Patrick, when did you say you're? Okay. Okay. Y'all just continue to remember Patrick. Lift him up. All right. If there's nobody else, I'm going to open us in a word of prayer. I'll let TJ get in here first. TJ, we're getting ready to pray. You got anybody? Put you on the spot, man. Put you right on the spot, didn't I? All right. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for this evening. Lord, I thank you for each and every person here. Lord, I do believe no one's here by accident. Lord, I believe that you have it in your divine plan, Lord, that we're all here to listen to what you have to say to us. Lord, I just pray that you will use me in a way that's pleasing to you, Lord, and that we would just gather some more knowledge about marriage, Lord, and the things to do. Lord, that will be pleasing to you, Lord, and to better our relationship with our spouses. Lord, I do lift up each and every one we've mentioned. Lord, you know each and every need there. And once again, I especially lift up the Cogdill family and David and little David, Lord, and just the tragedy they had to witness. And Lord, that you would just continue to give them peace and comfort and strength. Lord, I do lift up Tex and Caroline Jackson, Lord, and Trent, the church the church that needs a pastor, Lord, and anybody I might have missed or anything, Lord. You know each and every need before they're ever spoken. Lord, I love you, and it's in your Son's holy and precious name that we pray. Amen. All right, so I forgot what I opened with the icebreaker last week for a little joke or something. But anyway, so I got something else. I got something I thought was maybe a little better than last week. And it was an old joke I heard, and it was Jesus and Moses were playing golf up in heaven. And so Jesus, being the popular figure that he is in heaven, he just wanted to have a relaxing day on the course with Moses. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to go incognito. He said, no, he shaved his beard off and took his long hair and put it up in the ball cap. And so he and Moses went and played a round of golf, and they got about hole 5 or 6, and it was just the two of them. And they caught up with a group of 4, So if you've ever played golf, that's how it works. There's 4 people playing golf. It takes them a lot longer than 2 people playing golf. So, Jesus gets up there and Moses and, say, you mind if we play through? And force them, oh, yeah, go right ahead. So it's par 4, and there's water about 300 yards out. Jesus said, what you going to hit, Moses? Moses says, well, he said, I'm going to hit a 3-iron. He said, I'm going to lay up. And then he says, then I'm going to clear the water with my second shot. So he hit his first shot with a 3-iron and knocked it up there right close to the water, but just where he could make the perfect shot for the second shot. And Jesus got up there at the tee box, and forced him still waiting back there behind him, letting him play through. And Moses said, what you going to hit, Jesus? He said, I'm going to hit a 1-wood. He said, I'm going to carry the water. He said, I'm going to make that ball all the way across that water. Moses said, man, I don't know. He said, you ain't going to be able to hit that shot. He said, that's a 350-yard shot in the air. And he said, Tiger Woods can do it. I can do it. Okay, go ahead. As Jesus reared back, he knocked that golf ball bloosh right in the water. Hung his head. He went out there, got to the water, walked right across the water, did his hand down the water, picked up the ball, started walking back across the water. One of them guys come up and forced him, looked at him and said, who's that guy I think he is, Jesus? He goes, nope, Tiger Woods. So I thought about putting that in perspective and tying it in with what we're going to talk about tonight. And this pertains not only to marriage, but just anything in general. So you think about professional golfers and how good they are, or professional anybody. Jake bass fishes a lot, professional bass fisherman. Whatever you're doing, if you are considered a professional, you aren't born that way. Number one, you have God-given talent. And then you work hard and you train, and they do all these things to become professionals. And so none of us in here are professional athletes. Have y'all got it from last week or same one? Okay. There you go. If you are a professional athlete in here, let us know. I know Jake could play some ball, and both Jakes, so I need to be clear on who I'm talking about. Both of them could play some baseball, I know. And but as far as to my knowledge, nobody's a professional athlete in here. Nobody's probably going to be. You don't think of marriage as being professional, but that's how we should treat it. We should be the very best husband, wife, whatever. And that's what we've talked about the past 2 lessons. This is the 3rd lesson. It's finishing up the 2nd lesson because we last week was great and it lasted longer than I thought. So we're going to finish up with lesson number 2 tonight. And if I have some time left over, I've got something else, just some personal testimony about mine and Melanie's relationship and once again what brought us here to this point in our life that I'll share with you if we get to that. With that being said, before we start in the lesson, L.A., can you play that clip?
While I was in college, it didn't really matter who I talked to about Jesus. Almost everyone seemed pretty open or pretty okay with, chatting about his grace, his forgiveness, and his love. But I remember almost everyone, like clockwork, would start to get upset and kind of have this righteous anger whenever I would bring up those passages where Jesus asks for everything. He says, you need to give up your life. You need to die to self. You need to love me more than your mom and your dad. And there was almost kind of this how dare he attitude that would boil up when I would chat with people about that. And I remember perfectly I would understand it and say that totally makes sense. But the more I thought about it, I started to realize, how come he's the only one we get mad at that asks that, right? We're perfectly fine with everything else in our life, asking everything from us and asking us to sacrifice for. It's like, how many marriages have we seen where the father is totally willing to give up everything? The relationship with the kids, the relationship with the wife, maybe his friends at church, because he wants to have an adulterous relationship. Or how many 16-year-old teenage girls do we know who are willing to sacrifice their bodies, their minds, their emotions, their friends for a boyfriend? How many people do we know that are willing to sacrifice everything on the altar of their job? And so the truth that I started to realize is, it's not that we should get mad at Jesus for asking everything from us. It's actually that everything does that. There's one thing in every single one of our lives that demands everything from us. It says, I want all of you. And what's unique is that it's not that Jesus is unique in asking everything for us, but Jesus is unique in that he actually gives up everything for us first. Jesus is the only one out of lust, anger, adultery, relationships, reputation, power, sex. He's the only one out of all those things that actually says, I'm going to give you everything I have to compel you to give everything up for me. See, the truth is, all those other things slap a spiked leash on us and drag us around the corridors of life, forcing us as a slave to do what they say. And they always overpromise and underdeliver. But Jesus says, I'm only demanding your life because I gave you my life. I'm only demanding your obedience because I served you first. And when you understand that, when you see that the cross is the ultimate compelling love pulling you in, you realize that he's better than every single thing you've been pursuing in this life.
Thank you. So that's a video that I've watched many times, and I love that video because that's so typical of how I've lived my life a lot of times, and pursuing so many different things, trying to find happiness and trying to find whatever, and saying, well, as a Christian, Jesus wants so much from us. But it's just like that young man says. I mean, yeah, he does want everything from us. He wants our very best. Whatever we're doing, he wants our very best. But he laid down his life first. He gave us his all so we can give him our all. And so that opens up to the end part of this second lesson that we'll talk about. So for those of y'all who weren't here, y'all might want to turn it down just a touch. Because I know if I get loud, it's going to distort. We talked about, and I'll just briefly run through the topics to get to the one we're at. We talked about exercising spiritually, reading God's Word and praying every day, thinking positive, harnessing negative thoughts, showing your spouse that you love them at least once a day, telling your spouse that you love them at least once a day, listening to your spouse, not over talking, support your spouse. Big one here. Don't compare your spouse to anyone else. And then we finished up with staying financially sound. And we had some really good discussion last week. And if we go to discuss stuff tonight, and we'll get y'all's feedback, remind me to grab I guess there's a microphone up here. Remind me to grab that and give it to you so the people who are watching us and when it's viewed on Facebook, that they can hear whatever y'all have to say back. So we open up tonight's lesson with guard yourself, where we left off right after being financially sound. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. All right, guard yourself. For me, and a lot of y'all have heard me talk about this before. For me personally, the one thing that I refuse to do is I refuse to eat out with another female that is not my wife or not my mom or not my sister, just the two of us. I don't put myself in that situation. Jake and I are great friends, and his wife Larson, we're all great friends. I'm not going to go out and meet her to eat lunch anywhere, no matter whether, Jake says it's fine. It doesn't matter if Patrick says, hey, you and Crystal, y'all go grab a bite to eat if you want or whatever, if y'all up there in Sumter. No, it's not happening. Think about what are your weaknesses? And we'll get into social media in just a little bit, but you think about how much temptation there is online and social media. Are you, as the video talked about, are you so driven at work that that's all you're focused on? And it's causing you to be somebody that God never intended you to be. Is it alcohol? Is it prescription drugs? We all know. We just dealt with that recently in our own church. With someone, and it comes in all forms. And as I always say about an adulterous affair doesn't start with a man and a woman meeting up to have sex. It doesn't start that way. It starts with a simple flirtatious comment. This day and time is super easy because there's cell phones, and people are brave behind the phone. Okay? People are brave behind the phone. Be careful. Guard yourself. Don't let Satan get any foothold, any chance to sneak in there and cause problems in your life and in your marriage. Anybody want to add anything to that? And let me go ahead and find a microphone. Because whether you want to add something to that or not, I know at some point somebody will want to say something. L.A. or Travis, either one of these?
The one without the cover on it's fine. There you go. That's the best one.
Hello? Hello? There we go. All right, anybody? All right. Guard your spouse. Next point. Guard your spouse. Sometimes we are really careful to, especially after you've slipped up and fell as many times as I have in my life, you can start figuring out how to guard yourself. Make sure you guard your spouse. Maybe your spouse is somebody who's never done anything wrong. And I say we all sin. I don't mean that, but maybe they've been sheltered, and maybe they aren't tempted as often as some of us. There's still temptations there. Notice things. Example. You've been married 5 years, and your spouse never works late. And this is not. I use a lot of personal examples. This is not a personal example I'm using. Okay. Your spouse starts working late, whether it's your husband or your wife, and and they work late one day, and then the next week they work late 2 days, and then the next thing you know, they're working late all the time. Okay, I'm not saying that work's not important, and I'm not saying that there aren't times when you have to work late. A lot of times that's something. There's something going on. Silly as it may sound, don't ignore the signs. If every time you go around your spouse and they take their phone and they're hiding it from you, look here. You've got a right as a spouse. You have a right to say, "Hey, what are you looking at?" I ask my wife that all the time, not because I'm worried about what she's looking at, because I'm nosy. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. make sure and guard your spouse. Because if you're not if you're not looking out for them, who is? That's another way Satan will twist things up. Maybe your spouse is looking for you to care and show some interest. There was a time in my life where I went through a phase when we were married where I loved Melanie, but I'll be honest, I had fallen off the path of showing a lot of affection and doing the things that I need to do as a man, as a husband. Doing all the things we talked about last week, showing her that I loved her on a daily basis, telling her that I loved her every day. I fell short on all those things. Guard yourself, guard your spouse. Next one's a big one. Limit your time on social media. And I pulled up some facts here. These are all facts I got online. 1 in 3 divorces start as online affairs. 1 in 3 divorces. And I think we discussed divorce rates the first class. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was, wanting to say almost 50% for first marriages and 66% for second marriages and like 73% for third marriage. Okay, 1 in 3 divorces start as online affairs. 25% of couples fight about Facebook at least once a week. 1 in 7 married people have contemplated divorce because of their partner's social media activity. 1 in 5 feel uneasy about their relationship after discovering something on their partner's Facebook account. Facebook is the #1 source for online divorce evidence. 81% of divorce attorneys have used or encountered evidence obtained from social media. 81%. 14% of adults say they look through their partner's social media accounts for evidence of infidelity. Once again, I'll go back to the previous point. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with checking your. We've always joked as friends about people that have joint Facebook accounts. Like, yeah, somebody was cheating on somebody, so they got joint Facebook accounts. But that nonetheless, if you've got separate Facebook accounts, nothing wrong with checking. Okay.
I have a comment to make on that.
Oh yeah, we're gonna. Here you go, and y'all can just keep this back here and pass it around, and whoever needs it. Go ahead, Miss Judy.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Is it
ma'am.
working? I was just going to say that sometimes it even does you good to check because you find out you were wrong, and that builds your confidence up. I mean, it makes you shed that fear or suspicion. If you just check and find out, then and you don't have to wonder and sit there night after night worrying.
Miss Judy, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. You're exactly right. That's a great point. If you're worried about something, do some investigating, find out, and you might find out very well that there's everything's fine and nothing's going on. Y'all, and let's step back for a second from the infidelity part and all the things that we consider bad things on social media. Let's think about the things with social media that in the long run cause problems. And that main one being communication. In my opinion, communication. And I know Jake and Crystal, Melanie sitting here thinking, well, Ray, you're the first one to pull something up on YouTube when we all together and we'll be looking at a video. I do, okay? I do. But overall, I don't consider somebody who stays on social media all the time. Jake and I have a lot of great conversations, and very few of them involve us sitting around a table and texting. Never have we sat at a table together and text each other back and forth or sit there. We talk. We talk. And anybody in here that grew up I'm going to go with 30 years or older, as a kid, there was nothing else but to sit around and talk to each other, play with each other, do stuff and be kids, and then as adults, sit and listen to adults talk and gain life lessons, family history, and stuff that truly matters And I mean, I can get passionate about this. We waste, and I say we, I am talking in the mirror, just the stuff that I look at is such a waste of time. It's fun and we laugh about it, but it's such a waste of time. If we go back to what we're called to do as Christian men and women and as a married family, a man and a woman, raising children, what are we called to do? To sit in a house and everybody be on the cell phone? Y'all, it's killing us. I'm telling you, it's killing families. What are your children learning from you? How do your children have a chance to learn how to interact in the real world? Because I will say this, there is something that does still exist, and that is, just because you're good on social media doesn't mean you're going to find a good job and be successful in life. Now, that has not changed. You know, it might help you find a job, but it's not going to help you keep that job. What are you teaching your children by sitting on the phone all the time? Playing games. Once again, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Looking at junk. Spend some time reading God's Word. Spend some time actually interacting with your family. Talking to your wife. Asking her how her day was. Asking him how his day was. Feedback on that. What have y'all seen? What have y'all, if somebody wants to get personal and share, you know, in some way it's hurt you or caused you problems. What would you do different? Anything. Because that's how we all learn. That's how I learn.
Just an observation of what you're saying. A few weeks ago, Joyce and I were over at Outback in Sumter there, and there was a couple that came in right after we sat down, and they sat down, and first thing they did, each of them pulled out their cell phones, and both of them, I said, Joyce, watch the couple over here, what they do. And the whole night we were there, we ate our meal, and we were talking, and I said, watch the couple over here, how much they interact with each other. They never looked up, acknowledged each other, said anything to each other. They ate the meal with the cell phone in one hand and the fork in the other.
Wow.
And they got up and left. They didn't communicate with each other. They had their cell phone in their hand the whole time, texting back and forth to somebody. But wow. That's, you know, it goes along with what you're saying, that the people today, especially the younger couples today, they just they get addicted to this stuff. And instead of communicating with each other, they're communicating on social media, and I think that just adds to the problems. Sooner or later, it's gonna affect the marriage.
Thank you, Robbie. You used the word addicted. Before everybody got in here, Elizabeth and I were talking, and she said her and Andrew had a discussion about social media, and you know, I said addiction. I used the term addiction. It is. It's no different than drugs or alcohol or whatever your vice may be. There's no difference, and that's all it is. It's a bad habit. We talked about habits last week, and how you have good habits and you have bad habits. Normally, when people refer to a habit, they refer to it as a bad habit. Getting your cell phone out and sitting on it is a bad habit, y'all. I don't care how you justify it, how we try to justify it, and what you think you're gaining from it. It's like so many things in our lives that the devil has used that were, when they first came out, you know, cell phone was a great invention. I really do believe that. When it was just used for talking, Crystal. You're absolutely right. Dead on the money. When it was just used for talking. You have a roadside emergency. You don't have to wave down a complete stranger that you don't know whether one day going to put a gun to your head and steal your car or actually help you out. You could get in touch with people, and you could, you know, guard yourself. Guard yourself. Stay off. Not stay off of it. Limit it. And once again, I'm not preaching. I'm just talking, and I'm talking to myself. Limit your time on social media. Next one. Tell the truth. Always be honest, even when it might hurt the other person's feelings. I wrote down here, lies create lies, then those lies create more lies and bigger lies, and those lies create never-ending lies and unfaithfulness and deceit, self-destruction. You can take it as bragging. You can take it as just what it's worth. You know, y'all know where I'm going with this. Yeah. I'm honest to a fault, if there is such a thing. I'm honest to a fault, if there is such a thing. But I'll never apologize for that. Y'all, when you start just the littlest of lies, and I know it sounds trivial to a lot of people, and I'm not talking about a birthday gift, you know, or a Christmas gift. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Little stuff. Well, what did you do after work? Well, I just ran by the gas station. When what you actually did was, well, you ran by the gas station, and then you went to Walmart and picked up something, or maybe you stopped at a friend's house. Just tell your spouse what you did. If you're not doing anything wrong, there's no reason to even tell any little bit of fib. We have so much in life that revolves around untruths and lies in the world we live in. It's hard to find honest people. It really is. Once again, it doesn't start. People don't become. I'm going to stop for a minute. Don't say any names out loud, but I want you to think about somebody. We all should know somebody, if you think for just a minute, of somebody that is just, you say, they're just full of bull. All they do is lie. I mean, their life is a lie. Everything that comes out their mouth is a lie. Just think about that for a second. Got a guy I work with that's like that. He's somebody that I actually do consider a decent guy. But he is so full of junk. And it's all small stuff. It's never any big lies. It's just a bunch of bull. It's always something, and it's always a lie. Getting back on the point here. Here's my point. If your spouse can't trust you to tell them the truth about stopping at a gas station, and once again, I'm just using this example, stopping at a gas station, and instead of saying, hey, I stopped at the gas station and I went by Walmart and picked up something, you just tell her or tell him or her, I went by the gas station. The next day, if the guy did that, he stops at the gas station and he goes to Walmart and gets something. You get home, your wife asks, well, what'd you do after work? Well, I went by the gas station. The next day, your wife runs into somebody, one of your co-friends, your friends, mutual friends. Hey, did so-and-so tell you I saw him at Walmart? You saw me at Walmart yesterday? Oh, really? When'd you see it? Well, it was about 5:30 in the afternoon. He said he had just gone to the gas station. He was going into Walmart to pick up something. Okay. Why is your spouse ever going to believe anything you say? If you're going to lie about something trivial like that, you'll lie about anything. You're sure going to lie about something if you really mess up. Tell the truth. It's like a lot of things. It's a vicious cycle. Anybody got anything on that? Good point, Mr. Bill. Good point. That's what Mr. Bill said. That's what fine friends is for. On your little app. I've got Melanie on mine, and I don't ever look at it. She looks and sees where I am, but I don't blame her. I wouldn't trust me either.
Ray, I recommend I probably did. We've been married a long time, but ever since day one, but that's okay. When I walk out,
We want to get it on tape.
I'll see you later. Ray was saying that to me by the side of the wall. I'll see you later. I never tell her where I go. She never asks where I go. Cause I can't tell you, I don't know until I be back out, cause that might be 5 hours when I get back. But we just had that type truck.
But if she asks you,
Oh, she asked me, but
You-
I tell her, but.
that's right. Yeah, so don't misunderstand me. Yeah, I don't, you don't have to tell your spouse everywhere you're going before you do it. Just, if she asks, tell her. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, not everybody can just leave the house and just go like Mr. Leslie can. That's as I call Jake sometimes. That's a man's man.
That is something I'm really proud of her. She has never complained about that, she has never complained. I've worked a lot of 80-hour weeks, and she has never said the first word like that.
But have you ever given her a reason?
She was raised on the same path. I raised up in the farm, and that's just the way it was. That's the way it is, still is.
So have you given her a reason not to trust you over all that time, though?
Look, I'm too tired. Tired of doing anything before. She ain't got to worry about that. But no.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Miss.
One time he messed up was when he spent his whole paycheck on CB radio when he first got there.
That happened 43 years ago. We've been married. That's the only fault she got. She forgives, but she don't forget.
That's right.
We weren't married 6 weeks and spent his entire paycheck on CB radio that sat on the shelf within 90 days later.
I guess it was important.
What kind of radio was it, Leslie? I like those things too.
I still got it.
Anybody else want to share anything?
And how much has she spent it, Bill?
Moving right along.
Moving right along.
That's a moving right along. They understand Daddy's doing what he wants to on Saturday afternoon, and that's one thing about them. You know, they're not worried about. They never have. You know, they have that comfort and that understanding of each other. But like I said, at the same time, that gives Mama the freedom to that's what works for them. That's what works for them. And it's not like, you know, they don't probably know what each other's doing anyway. You know, Mama's probably
Yes, unfortunately.
shopping, and Daddy's just probably riding around.
Vice is shopping, I'm going to admit it, in church, but yes, that is my vice. I like to shop a lot.
If that's your biggest vice, you are right.
It's one of the reasons I'm not retired.
See, and she's honest too, right there.
They've had that understanding forever, like you said, forever.
But to jump ahead just a little bit to your next topic, even on Saturdays, if I'm gone all day, work all day, we know by 5:30, 6 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, we meet back up, we're going out somewhere. And we do that religiously, have always done.
So let's roll into that. Let's roll into the next point. Spend quality time with your spouse. So just what Mr. Leslie just said, you know, no matter what he had going on during the week, he always, you know, will try to make some quality time for Miss Lane on Saturday. And I'm sure other times too. But it's so important. I put that, you know, we call them getaways. It's called getaway for a reason. You get away. You get away from your kids. You get away from your cell phone. You get away from your work. Once again, incorporating social media and cell phone. You can't have a getaway, y'all, if you're on your phone all the time, and if you're answering work. Y'all, I'm sorry. I once again, I can get fired up about this stuff. My wife, God bless her, when she worked for McLeod, personal phone, personal cell phone. They didn't pay a dime of her phone bill. And call and text her, I'm talking about all times of the night and the morning. And she was a faithful worker, and she answered all of them. I don't believe in that. I do not believe in that. And I don't believe you should do it. And I told her that. You interrupt all this time. Spend quality time with your spouse. We have a great relationship, as I've talked about many times, and we love doing stuff with our kids. And I will be honest, that is one of my flaws. Ever since Cade was born until this very day, I spend, if there's such a thing as too much time with the children, I have spent too much time with the children because it's cost me time with my wife. You can make anything an idol, money and kids among many. For me, my idols have been my children. I've put them over my wife, certainly. I've put them in front of God. I love them. But my wife, thank the Lord, she's hung in there and stayed with me for 18 years. But back in 2008, that was one of many, many things, I'm sure, while my wife was ready to hang it up and leave me. Once again, looking back on it, I couldn't blame her. I couldn't blame her one bit. Self-absorbed, and the times I wasn't self-absorbed, it was all about the children, and very little time for her and I. Make sure, brother, no matter how busy you are, and if you're so busy that you don't ever have time for your spouse, it's just like we talk about if you're too busy to pray, or if you're too busy to spend a little bit of time in God's Word, if you're too busy for your spouse that you can't have at least an hour alone a couple of nights a week. I'm not talking about going anywhere, just at your house. Just put the kids to bed, get away for an hour, you and her. Or you and him. I always refer to it as it's in the man.
It may just be a few minutes, but generally we talk on the way home from work every day, because that is our 15 or 20 minutes that nobody else is around, kids aren't around, we can talk about what we need to talk about, and sometimes it's just nothing, but that's 15 or 20 minutes a day we spend
talking to you. And if that's all you got, then that's at least 15 minutes. But if you don't have even 15 minutes, then you're too busy. You have too much going on. And you can't say that it's all work and it's all important. Baloney. That's bull. I'll tell it to your face. You're lying. Nobody's that important. You made a commitment before God and witnesses that you love your spouse and you be with them for better or for worse. And we discussed all the vows in the first lesson and what you promised before God. And if you're too busy to spend an hour or 15 minutes, whatever, some time with your spouse on a daily basis, you're too busy. Change some stuff up. But not only that, not just a little bit of time on a daily basis, but then what Mr. Leslie talked about. I'm guilty. I'm bad about not taking my wife out to eat. I really am, because I'm a tightwad. I mean, they want to go out. The three couples, me and Melanie, Patrick, Crystal, Jake, and Larson. They always, not always, actually they don't a lot of times, but anytime they mention wanting to go out to eat, I just cringe. I'm like, let's just grill something. What's that, Jake? Eat some hot dogs. That's right, eat some hot dogs. My favorite food, baby. Hot dogs. You can get them cheap. My wife made me buy beef, so I had to get out of eating the chicken hot dogs, which so now we got to eat all beef. So take your wife out to eat. If the woman's the breadwinner in the family, take your husband out to eat. L.A., I know my sister has to take you out to eat. Just messing with you. And then to go a step further, and I have done okay at this, at least once a year. At least once a year. Take a weekend at minimum and get away with your spouse. Before you ever had children, before you met in-laws, before any of this happened, it was you and her, or you and him. It was the two of you. And you fell in love. And something about that person made you fall in love with them. There was probably many things. And once again, going back to the first lesson, not just the physical attraction, because that will fade. That changes. But all the other things you fell in love with about them. That's the things you rekindle when you spend time with them. That's the things, once again, I love spending time with Melanie. I do. And the times I do spend with her, just me and her, I feel bad for not spending more time with her. Make sure you spend time with your spouse. And I know that Mr. Leslie, Miss Lane, you gave a quick example, but I'd love to hear from Mr. Bill, Miss Kay, Robbie, Joyce, Bruce, Judy, Kathy, some of these people have been together for many years. Just hear something back from one of you.
Joyce and I have a standing date night every Friday night. We go to Walmart and get groceries, and then we get something to eat somewhere. But the challenge is, and we've tried this, try to go out on your date night and talk about everything except your children and your work. Don't talk about your kids. Don't talk about your work. Try to find positive things to talk about each other. Try that as an experiment. And you'll find it's hard to do because you're not used to doing it. We're talking about everything.
We talk about children, we don't talk about children.
That's great advice, Robbie. Y'all
try to talk about each other instead of talking about the first thing we want to talk about is your work, and you want to talk about your kids and what's going on in their lives, but try to talk about each other and see how hard that is to do.
But I'm sure you've gotten better at it, right?
Somewhat. It's always a work in progress.
That's right.
It's almost like getting to know them again, because you're so split with work and, for a long time you're working all day long. You aren't together that much. By the time you get home at night and get supper ready and sit down in the chair and you're so doggone tired you can't talk, you just sort of grow apart, And a date night, like Robbie was just talking about, that's good. Go out and discuss what each of you need and want and like, and, I couldn't even tell you right now what Bruce's favorite candy bar is, I don't know. I mean, it's just little things that you realize, dog, I don't even know. But anyway, just food for
that's
thought.
excellent. Excellent advice.
I think I kind of approach it, Ray, as, so you talked about earlier being a professional athlete, right? Being really good at something. And using your date night or your getaway or just sitting on your back porch talking during the day is kind of like that practice to get you to be that professional husband or that professional wife. Because, professional athletes weren't born that way, like you said. It's years of practice and years of, being beat down and told no, and I'm not saying that your wife or husband is beating you down, but, you go through those hard times and you go through that challenge in the mud, but using those date nights and getaways as your practice ultimately going to get you to being married for 40 hour long y'all been married. So anyway, that's kind of how I look at it.
Great advice, Jake. Yes. So I'm sure everybody heard what Jake's saying, but it's all practice. It's all practicing to attain to be the best husband you can be, or best wife you can be.
I think over time, Leslie and Elaine can relate to that, and a lot of us can relate to that, is that it comes that trust. You can't hear me? It's that trust, that understanding. It's just like growing in your faith. We got, our thing is we got matching recliners and they're 2 feet apart. So, those are that's our date night. But I think it's quality time. It is quality time. It's not hearing, but it's really listening. We hear a lot of things. That's Kay and I, we're both losing our hearing, I think. But anyway, we forget what the other said 5 minutes ago, and because we didn't listen. And so it's listening and it's positive feedback. In other words, if you're sitting at the dinner table, have a real conversation. It's talking and listening and communicating, is what you said earlier. But I think you also add that to your children as well. I think as a husband and wife and as a family, then you, like you said about Cade and Cole, you invest quality time in them. Is that wrong? You yourself admit maybe too much. Maybe I'm overboard. But I think that's true in anything. gosh, how many guys fish too much? How many guys hunt too much? You're talking about social media. I think we all have work that we put our time into. I use Will as an example. I don't know where he got it from. He didn't get it from us. But he spends a morning a week with one child. Breakfast one morning a week with each child. Then they have a family night where it's board games, no social, no video. It's board games one night a week. And then they try to, one night a week, do something as a family on an outing. So just not with your spouse, but as a family. Raise a solid family. And it's not up to me, it's not up to her, it's up to both of us. And it's not a 50-50, it's 100-100. We both got in this thing together, and you got to give it all. And so to me, it's always been quality, because you all know I was gone a lot. But when I was here, I tried to be a husband and a daddy, because I did work a lot like Leslie. I was gone a lot throughout my career. So when I was here, it has to be quality time. It has to be a good listener, a good communicator. And over time, then you grow old, and then you don't have to communicate anymore. You just sit over there in the recliner.
And you know what? And that's okay.
That's right.
So that way, that's okay. You don't look back on your life. Which, once again, you're not going to have to look back on your life and say, "Well, I wasted it looking." How many hours did I look and play Candy Crush? Whatever. Think about how many people, 30 years and younger, that are married, that if they continue the same trend they're doing, what are they going to say? Number one, they're not going to make, you don't make it in marriage by being two individuals that don't communicate. It doesn't work. Period.
Well, Ray, there is absolutely no doubt that your children see and do what you do. And they mimic what you do, and they will grow up. If you don't, look at these young children today in this family, and see what those young children want to do when they grow up. And they're going to be, if you spend a lot of time, Kipton, ask little Kipton, 5 years old, what's he want to be when he grows up? Fisherman. Because Daddy spends all the time fishing. So they're gonna do what you do.
That's right.
And grandparents too. They're gonna see what you're doing, and that's what they want to mimic. So what do you want your children to invest in? Candy Crush and
right, and junk.
Facebook, because they see it, and they will mimic it.
What we do is teaching them.
But there is one activity that I'd like to encourage all young couples and older couples to do that we have done through the years, and that's walking together. When you walk, you can't be on your phone, you can't be on Facebook. You talk to each other. So we've gotten away from it here lately, but we used to get up first thing every morning and walk. And while we were walking, of course, we'd be talking.
Miss Kay, it is neat how God. Oh, it is 8 o'clock. I will wrap this up quick, y'all. It's neat how God works, and leads into my last point. I actually didn't put on the thing because I was like I don't want to offend anybody, but since you said it, I'm going to put it out there. The last point I had that I thought about mentioning was exercise physically, and I had it last because, in the scheme of things and out of all of it, it probably is the least. But here's where I'm going with it, and like I say, I'll make this quick. Two things. Number one, it's just a fact. Walking, if you like running, run. I can't stand to run. Lift weights, whatever it is. Try to exercise physically, but specifically aerobically versus anaerobically, being lifting weights. Aerobically is good for your heart. And you can look online and see everything, all the benefits of it. Number two, it is a fact that we get older, and it is a fact that we age, and it helps age you more gracefully, I should say. But here's something else And I hope y'all know me. I think all y'all know me well enough to know that if I'm offend anybody, I seriously, I do not mean anything by it. This is just my feelings. I think it's very sad when couples get together and a lot of times it's both spouses, but one spouse lets himself go. Not everybody holds weight the same way as others. I'm not talking about in terms of how big somebody is or how small somebody is. I'm talking about overall your appearance. But a lot of times it is because of physical inactivity. And what's the first thing that happens when that person that has let themselves go, what's the first thing that happens when somebody else shows some interest in them outside of marriage? Another sign to look for. I'm telling you, if you've lived with somebody who's not doing anything and don't care about putting on makeup or doesn't care about, looking nice for you, women, if you got a husband that just walks around like a slob and all of a sudden, you see him got out of work one day and boy, he's zipped up nice and tight and he's ready to go, and look around. Chances are he hadn't changed for you. Do that for each other. Exercise physically. Keep yourself in good shape. If you love each other, you want to have the happiest, longest life you can, and it's a good way to do it is to keep yourself in shape. Y'all, thank y'all for being here. Both Jakes, thank y'all for being here. My buddy down here and my other buddy back there that I don't see that much anymore. But thank y'all for being here, and LA, thank you again for hooking all this up. Kathy, will you lead us in the closing prayer?
Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, Lord. You give us so much wisdom if we just pay attention. Lord, we can talk to each other, we can support each other. That's what we do as brothers and sisters in Christ. And Lord, I pray that would be what we do for each other as spouses and as friends and, like I said, brothers and